Those of you joining us by way of technology, we are resuming our study of 1 Thessalonians. We're in chapter 4, and the text for study today will be verses 13 through 18. And this is always a timely passage, and certainly a timely passage today, as it speaks about the comfort that we should get from the return of Jesus. That's what this text then is all about. Chapter 4 we divide into three basic parts. We've looked at verses 1 to 8. Paul gives very strict warnings against impurity. And then verses 9 to 12, encouragement for them to love one another even more and to get to work. And now comfort concerning Christians who have died. And that is our text for study today. The story is told of a great godly older Christian woman who was going to the store one day. She, of course, was a devout Christian. She believed in, studied, and followed her Bible. And she went to the store, and on the steps of that store, this was a country store, there were some young men who had the habit of just making fun of people or picking at people who came in the store. I don't know that the store owner liked that, but they were perched up there and just sort of taunting people, and they started taunting this lady. They knew she was a Christian, and one of them said, well, he said, preacher says Jesus is coming back one day. And the lady, she didn't say anything in response. She knew they were up to no good. And another one said, you need to go home and get ready. Jesus might come back today. And finally, she looked at the young man that said that and said, I don't have to go home and get ready. What'd she say? I'm always ready. I'm always ready for Jesus to come back. And that's a mindset that I hope that we all have. I know there's obviously some nervousness about the end of time and the Lord's return. I think that's natural. But again, just the encouragement to always be ready. If you're always ready for whatever, it doesn't matter what happens. If you're driving down the road and all of a sudden you see somebody coming at you in the wrong lane head on, if you're always ready, obviously that'll be a terrible moment, but if you're always ready, well, you're ready. And if the trumpet sounds today, we don't have to scurry around wondering, am I ready, if we're always ready. So that's what her attitude was, a godly attitude, a Bible attitude, and really that's what the teaching of the Bible is. The subject of Jesus coming back is a Bible subject. Somebody counted that Jesus' return is referred to over 300 times in the pages of the New Testament. 300 times. The very final scripture in the Bible, Revelation 22, verse 20, John says, even so come, Lord Jesus. So a good amen, of course, to the Bible, and hopefully an amen to our lives even now, that we are ready for the Lord's return. Now, we mentioned this before in every chapter of 1 Thessalonians, every one of them. How many chapters in 1 Thessalonians? 5. In every single one of them, Paul refers to the second coming of Christ. We've already looked at chapter 1, verse 10, 2:19, 3:13, and of course, rounding out all of chapter 4, 13 to 18, and then chapter 5, verse 2. Every chapter in 1 Thessalonians makes reference to the return of Jesus. And it was something on Paul's mind, their mind, and should be, of course, on our mind. We pointed out last week that some in Thessalonica drew the wrong impression about Paul's teaching regarding Jesus' return while he was with them, having established the church. The wrong conclusion to which they had jumped, they felt, like Paul was saying, Jesus' return is imminent. It is about to happen. And so many of them quit their jobs and didn't have any money, and they were sponging off others, and of course the admonition then to get back to work. Something they didn't take to heart, because he addresses that again in the second letter. But another problem that arose was others felt that those who had already died Jesus had not come back yet, and others of their loved ones who were Christians had already died. They concluded that somehow they're going to miss out on when Jesus comes back because they're already dead. And so Paul at length now is going to address that and clear up the misconception they had in that matter. And so when we look at these verses, Jesus' return is not something we should dread. It is comforting, really, as we think about our Lord returning, and so much so that we often do read these verses at funerals and things of that nature to give comfort to the family. Adam, if you will, read for us now our text. Just go ahead and read, if you will, verses 13 through 18.
But I would not have you to be ignorant, brethren, concerning them which are asleep, that ye sorrow not, even as others which have no hope. For if we believe that Jesus died and rose again, even so them also which sleep in Jesus will God bring with him. For this we say unto you by the word of the Lord, that we which are alive and remain, that the coming of the Lord shall not prevent them which are asleep. The Lord himself shall descend from heaven with a shout, with the voice of the archangel, and with the trump of God, and the dead in Christ shall rise first. Then we which are alive and remain shall be caught up together with them in the clouds, to meet the Lord in the air. And so shall we ever be with the Lord. Wherefore comfort one another with these words.
Okay, very good. Let's go back now to verse 13. And we'll note in this section that there are a couple of words that, though we may use today, we don't use in the same sense that they're used, at least in the King James translation, in this text. So we'll point some of those out, beginning with the first word, and that's verse 13, the word ignorant. Now, we do use the word ignorant today, and we really don't like it, do we? You like being called ignorant? Ignoramus, I guess, is a form of ignorant. Usually it's not a compliment to be called that, and some would say it's sort of uncouth to use that word of somebody in our culture, maybe so, maybe not. Maybe a better rendering of the word ignorant, you have a different translation instead of, I will not have you to be ignorant. What's another word for ignorant? Unlearned? What's that? Uninformed? In other words, I want you to know, how we might say it today, I don't want you to be in the dark concerning this matter. He's not offending them by how he's wording this. And some have pointed out, punctuation is all the difference in the world sometimes. I would not have you ignorant, brethren. Sounds a bit different than I would not have you to be ignorant, brethren. So you see the difference if you leave out the punctuation, you have a whole new meaning. So he's not insulting anybody, and we're not either. This is a matter I want you to know. I don't want you to be unaware of this return of Jesus and what I've taught you about that. We want you to know. So I want you to know, brothers, something about those who are asleep. Why on earth would they be worried about anybody asleep? I mean, they sleep, we sleep. You may be sleeping right now as I'm talking. I don't know. What's the big deal about being asleep? The word asleep here refers to what? Those who are dead. Those who are dead, okay? The Bible often speaks of death in a figurative sense as a sleep. Matthew 27:52, when Jesus was crucified, the Bible says that the tombs were open and the bodies of the saints came forth who had fallen asleep. They had died, in other words. Jesus said of his good friend Lazarus, the disciples came to him, told him, Lazarus is awfully sick, we need to go. And Jesus said what? He is asleep. They said, well, no sense in going if he's asleep. But of course, he spoke of sleep in death, John 11. Stephen was stoned to death, and the Bible says in Acts 7:60 that he fell asleep. Not that the stones just knocked him unconscious, but they stoned him to death. He died. Now, some, unfortunately, have concluded from this that the soul of man, when man dies, his soul goes to sleep. And so the doctrine of soul sleeping. Whenever you die, they say you go into an unconscious state, much like if you're in surgery or about to go into surgery, they give you anesthesia, and you're out and you're awake and you never knew what happened. They say that's what this is talking about here. The doctrine of soul sleeping, that between death and the resurrection, souls are simply in an unconscious comatose state. They're asleep. And yet the Bible does not teach that. The Bible has reference to the sleep referring to the body. The body. We know that the soul is not asleep because of so many passages, such as, say, the Mount of Transfiguration. Who appeared with Jesus on the Mount of Transfiguration? Moses and Elijah. Moses had been dead, what? For centuries. But his spirit was very much alert. What about the rich man and Lazarus? They both died. Were they asleep? Were their souls asleep? The Bible says the rich man was in what? Torment. And Lazarus was in Abraham's bosom comforted. They were not unconscious in a comatose state. Their souls were not. So sleep, referring to death, is a figurative usage of the term. The dead are no longer active in the world they left. We have the Latin word cemetery. Cemetery is a Latin word that literally means a place of sleep. You look at the body of the deceased. What about the body? It appears what? Be asleep. I mean, looks like you could just go and rouse him or her and they'd wake up. Looks just the natural state of sleep. The body is asleep. The body is at rest. But the soul is with God, and depending upon which compartment of the Hadean realm, is very much alert. So the word sleep is often used in the Bible simply of the state of the dead, not the soul, but really of the body, the cessation of activity in this life. So we're talking about the dead. And Paul says, I want you to know not to sorrow even as others who have no hope. Obviously, when a loved one dies, there is sorrow, there is grief. It is a heart-rending moment to see life leave a loved one. Whether a lifelong mate, a newborn child, a mom, dad, whomever, it is a stressful event. Is Paul saying here it is wrong to grieve when a loved one dies? Is that what he's saying? If Paul is saying that, then who was wrong for grieving when Lazarus died? What's the shortest verse in the English Bible? Jesus wept. John 11:35. I learned that as my first Bible verse to learn in Vacation Bible School about 56 years ago. In Vacation Bible School, Jesus wept. We had to memorize that, but also had to memorize the reference. And the teacher said, a good way to memorize the reference, we get out of class at 11:35. So John 11:35 is always stuck in my mind. Jesus wept. That is actually not the shortest verse in the original language, but in our English language we'll take it. So if grieving when a loved one dies is wrong, that would have meant Jesus was wrong. That would have meant those men who took the body of Stephen after the enemy stoned him to death. The Bible says they wept with a great lamentation. Then they would have been wrong. Those people from Ephesus hugging and crying when Paul left them, telling them he would never see them again, they would have been wrong for weeping. So Paul is not saying it is wrong to grieve when a loved one dies, but the problem is, the warning is grieving as if you have no what? Hope. There's the key to verse 13. Don't leave the word hope out. If our loved ones who are Christians have died, yes, it's natural to grieve and weep and mourn, but not as if there is no hope for them. Now, a person who dies without Christ, who dies not a Christian, well, there's a truly sad death, a sad way to end a life. And a person who dies without Christ, God's the judge, but the Bible itself says there's no hope of heaven if you don't have Christ in your life. If Jesus is not your Lord and you haven't obeyed Him. So that is a hopeless situation, and preachers will tell you it is much easier, preaching funerals for people who died who are Christians. And it's not always easy, but it is easier to do that because they died faithful than somebody who never, ever had use for God or the Lord in their lives. And those, you always preach the truth and you always be tactful, but those are hard situations to deal with and be right at the same time. Again, God's the judge of everybody, but no hope if I die, of course, without Christ. So it is not a hopeless grieving. It is not a desperate grieving. Again, the problem, they've gotten the idea that their loved ones who were Christians who died are going to miss out when Jesus comes back. So Paul says, well, let's clear that up. Verse 14. If we believe that Jesus died and rose again, do we believe that? Yes, we believe that. If we didn't believe that, we wouldn't be here. That's the very foundation of Christianity, is the resurrection of Christ. So it's not enough just to believe that Jesus died. The atheist will admit Jesus died. We're not going far enough if we just believe that. We believe that Jesus died and rose again. If God has the power to bring the body of Jesus out of the grave, guess what? He's got the power to bring everybody out of the grave, and He does. And so, you're going to see your loved ones again, is what Paul is saying. Even so them who sleep in Jesus, who've died Christians, in other words, will God bring with Him. The Bible teaches that, again, when Jesus returns, every grave is going to be opened. Whether the person in that grave was good or bad, John 5:28 and 29, the righteous and the wicked will be raised from the tomb when Jesus comes back. That wasn't Paul's point here. He's addressing Christians who've died. He's not saying that there will be another resurrection 1,000 years down the line for the wicked who've died. He's simply saying, I'm just addressing here Christians who have died. A discussion of the righteous dead. You're worried that your loved ones who've died are going to miss out when Jesus comes back. They're going to be first in line, in other words. Jesus will bring them with Him. That implies they are with Jesus now. Their souls are with Jesus now, much like Lazarus in Abraham's bosom, much like the penitent thief on the cross. Jesus said, today you'll be with me where? In paradise. His soul went to be with the Lord. So the righteous dead, their souls are with God. And when Jesus comes back, He's bringing them back with Him. They'll be reunited with the bodies from the grave. And that body will be changed, obviously. So you really envy them. You don't feel sorry for them. You sort of envy them. They're going to be first in this business of return. So verse 15, for this we are saying to you by the word of the Lord. I'm not telling you what I think. I'm not giving you my opinion. This is not how I feel on the matter. Often in religious discussions, those terms are used. Well, this is how I view it. This is what I think. This is what I feel about it. Well, so what? My concern is what? What does the Bible say? My feelings aren't going to get you to heaven. What I think is not going to get you to heaven. What does the Bible say? Paul is saying, I'm not telling you my word. I'm telling you the word of the Lord. This is God's word. And you can put that in the bank. It's going to happen. Okay? When Jesus returns, will there be some people alive when Jesus returns? Yes, there will. That tells us, there are some folks who say that there's going to be a worldwide cataclysm that is going to kill everybody, that every human is going to die. This verse disproves that view. When Jesus comes back, there will be people alive on this earth. So no nuclear holocaust is going to wipe everybody out. Now, it may wipe a lot of folks out, but my point is, there will always be some people alive on this planet until what? Jesus comes back. Some people are going to be alive when Jesus comes back, is the point. So those who are alive, notice that Paul says we, that includes him. He did not mean to imply he thought he would be alive when Jesus returned. He didn't know when Jesus would come back. But, and of course, we can use we, or whoever lives, if the world exists 1,000 years down the line, or 10 million, would be the we. Those who are still alive when Jesus comes back, the text says, King James says, shall not prevent them which are asleep. Now the word prevent, we use the word prevent today. I cleaned out my gutters yesterday to prevent the downpipes filling up and the water backing up and eventually rotting my roof and causing damage. So I did that as, what do we call it? Preventive maintenance, right? Prevent, to keep something from happening. Of course, you can see the commercials today. If you've seen that leaf filter commercial once, you've seen it 5 million times, right? People in that room, how many of you are still cleaning out your gutters? And people raise their hands and are put to shame. You ought not be up there. You might fall off. It's dangerous to do that. I can walk out that door and trip and break my neck, can I? Do I need to stop walking out the door? Grow a backbone. We're going to have to take risk in life. I've learned if I get up every month with my little leaf blower, every month it takes about 15 minutes to clean all my gutters out. You'll do it once a month. I haven't fallen off yet. I may fall off in, June. But whatever. And again, I guess to each his own, but I don't put a lot of faith in those leaf filters. They say you never have to clean your gutters again. But guess what? You'll have to clean the leaf filter. Your shingles, if you have a shingled roof, has grit. And that grit eventually makes its way down to the gutter. Okay, and that grit's going to go through those little holes that let the rain go in there. And that grit weighs a lot over the years. We've had to clean these gutters out here, and the grit that gets in there weighs a lot. It'll sag those gutters, and you'll have to take off the leaf filter to get the grit out. So I guess we may be sued by leaf filter after all these comments. I don't know. But just, use your head on some of these things. In Canada, they're not called gutters, by the way. You know what they call them? Eaves troughs. In Canada, they call them eaves troughs. To me, it's just easier to say gutters. But I guess that's uncouth, maybe up there, I don't know. Well, we're not talking about gutters. How do we get on gutters? Prevent. I did that to prevent. Those who are alive when Jesus comes back will not prevent those who are asleep. What on earth is he talking? What does the word prevent mean here? Another, precede, go before, precede. So, though we use the word prevent in our English language today, we do not use it in the sense it is used in this verse. The word here means precede or to go before. Those who are alive when Jesus comes back will not be ahead of those who've already died. Those who've already died, Christians, will be first in line, as we've already said. Verse 16, the Lord himself shall descend from heaven with a shout, with the voice of the archangel, the trump of God, and the dead in Christ shall rise first. Again, he's talking about the second coming of Jesus, and there have always been a lot of misconceptions about Jesus' return. There are those who have said, we know when it's going to happen. They have set dates for when Jesus is going to come back. How many times have they been right up to now? None. We're still here, right? But you may remember the name Harold Camping. He's now deceased. But he set several specific dates. I'm not talking about years. I'm not talking about months. He spelled out the day and the month and the year. Very specific. Jesus will return September 6, 1994. And then May the 21st, 2011. And then October 21st, 2011. To his credit, he finally admitted, you know what? I've been wrong. And he went a step further and said, I have sinned in trying to say when Jesus will come back. And you give people credit for admitting, he was a public figure, and he publicly stated, I should not have done that. So you pat people on the back and say, all is forgiven for that, because he apologized for that. But as far as when Jesus will come back, only who knows? God's the only one who knows. So we don't know. We just need to be ready. But another false view of Jesus' return is when Jesus comes back, some say it's going to be very secret. Very secret. And if you are faithful, when Jesus comes back, what's going to happen to you? You're going to be taken. What word do they use? Rapture. You will be raptured. All of a sudden your car going down the road, if you're a faithful Christian and the rapture happens, you're going to be lifted up from that car and it's going to crash into people. If you're flying a plane and you're the pilot and Jesus comes back, you're going to be taken from the plane, and I guess there you hope the co-pilot's an atheist, right? Somebody can take over the plane that can fly. But you've seen the bumper stickers in case of the rapture, this car will be unoccupied. You've seen all that, heard all of that. Well, again, the word rapture is nowhere found in the Bible. If it's not found in the Bible, that would raise a big flag for me. But again, the thought is when Jesus returns, it's going to be secret. Does this verse sound like when he returns it's going to be secret? Do you get the concept of quietness and secret from this verse? He will come to heaven with a whisper, whispering for all those who are faithful to join him. Is that what the verse says? What does it say? With a shout. He will come not silently, but with a shout, with the voice of the archangel. Some say Gabriel, but actually in the Bible, the only archangel, or the only angel the Bible calls an archangel, is Michael. Jude 9, Revelation chapter 12. And perhaps his voice is calling the other angels together, the Lord's elect, Matthew 24. So Jesus will come with a shout, not silent. He will come with the voice of the archangel. You don't depict that as being a whisper either. And with the trump of God. In olden times, whenever a king or an important dignitary came into a city, they would usually line up people with trumpets to give the blast for people to get ready because this important dignitary is coming into town. This is the blast of God's trumpet announcing that Jesus is going to return and is returning. So there's nothing silent or secret about any of this, is the point. The dead in Christ shall rise first. Again, not saying that the wicked dead will rise later, just pointing out that the dead in Christ shall rise first before the living rise. And then verse 17, then we which are alive and remain, those who are still living, shall be caught up together with them in the clouds. That is, Jesus is up there, the spirits and now resurrected bodies of the faithful up there, and then Christians who are still living will be then brought up there with them in the air to meet the Lord in the air. Does this verse say anything about Jesus setting foot on earth? Not one word in this verse or the Bible about when Jesus comes back, he's coming back to the earth. We say that because of the doctrine that says when Jesus comes back, he's going to set up what? His kingdom and rule how long on the earth? 1,000 years. And there's nothing in the Bible that even remotely hints at any of that. We're going to meet him in the air, not on the earth, not in Jerusalem. We won't travel to Jerusalem to see Jesus on his throne. When Jesus comes back, what's going to happen to this earth? It's going to be gone. 2 Peter chapter 3 is going to be dissolved, annihilated, burned up. Won't be any earth to set foot on. That's why we're lifted up, and everybody will be before the judgment seat of God. There will be no earth as we know it, as this earth is. So we which are alive and remain, you've got the dead with Christ, the Lord in the air, and then you're worried about your loved ones who've died. Don't worry, envy them. They're first with the Lord, and we're second, and I'll take second. I mean, either's good, but the point is to dispel the worry that they had about their loved ones who had died in Christ. Then we which are alive, verse 17, and remain shall be caught up together with him in the clouds to meet the Lord in the air, and so shall we ever be with the Lord. This is reunion time, correct? And it is a reunion never to be left. We have family reunions today. They may last a day, they may last a week, but eventually everybody has to go back home, don't they? You've got your job, you've got your place, you've got your responsibilities where you live. But in this grand reunion, there will be no leaving. I mean, it will be forever. Then shall we ever be with the Lord. And so, verse 18, therefore, wherefore, I'm saying all this for what purpose? Comfort. Encouragement. Comfort one another with these words. Again, it is natural and healthy to grieve when our loved ones die. But again, our grieving is tempered with hope. They have hope of heaven. And, we say a lot of times that death is not a period in our existence. It's just a what? Comma. It's just a comma. It's not goodbye, it's good night. In other words, we're going to see you again. We're going to see you again. And so these are comforting words. And I know that surely these help the brethren at Thessalonica, and these words can help us whenever we lose our loved ones today. We're out of time, and so Lord willing, we'll pick up next week in chapter 5, verse 1. 1 Thessalonians 5, verse number 1.